right. Well, we are live for another webinar we host once a month. We like to call Classroom Connections. And it's really just a gathering of a few folks who are interested in Book Creator. With me today, we have Cormac Cahill and Eric Stinebring. And I'm going to let these two introduce themselves in just a minute. Just to show the fun group, my name is David Hotler. I'm the community manager at Book Creator. I'm located in Madrid, Spain. Cormac is in Ireland, and Eric is calling in from the United States. So we have a really international group here, and I'm looking at the chat, seeing folks coming in from the USA, Croatia, Morocco, Tunisia. So it's a wonderfully dynamic global community that we've got joining us here today. And if you're watching the recording, thank you so much for the replay. And we appreciate wherever it is that you're joining from. We're super happy to be here and have you with us. Now, I'm going to let these two introduce themselves in just a second, but I just want to set the stage for our viewers today because I was very excited when I got the yes email back from these two gentlemen about joining. So Cormac and I were just chatting. Cormac has been using Book Creator since 2011. He remembers and actually has a copy of the very first book he ever published using Book Creator in 2012. And has been friends with Dan Amos and the Book Creator team throughout the entire journey, from just a tiny little startup idea just to help a few kids now to a global company where we're trying to help literally everyone. So Eric, Cormac's been here for a while. Eric, I get an email from one of our partnerships manager, Will, and he goes, "You've got to see what this new Book Creator user is doing in this district. He's been on in a year or two, but like, check out what he's doing with his classes, his journals, so that he's picked up on the power of this tool very quickly." And so I am delighted to bring together sort of these two very different users in different places and yet still amazing educators and individuals. So I'm going to be quiet. How about we start with you, Eric? Why don't you give us a little rundown where you're calling in from, what you teach, what you do? Yeah,
absolutely. So thanks for having me. And I started with Book Creator 2 years ago. So this is my second full year of using it with students in the classroom. I'm from Keene, New Hampshire, which is in the northeast portion of the United States. And I teach 7th grade social studies at Keene Middle School. So 12, 13-year-olds about American history.
Thank you, Eric. Awesome. Love it. Upper grade levels too. You'll see some of the differences here in just a second. Cormac, introduce us.
Okay, I've just unmuted myself there. So I'm Cormac Cahill, and I'm a primary school teacher in Ireland. So I keep being called this like veteran of Book Creator. So I'm beginning to feel very old. I've been around a long, long time. But I've generally tended to teach children from about kind of 8 to 11 or 12 years old. I also had a couple of years in an autism class as well. So I've had special education stuff, and I've used Book Creator with them as well. So what I'll be trying to show this evening is just some of the books that we've done over the years and different ideas for it. And if you're somebody who's kind of starting out, just maybe some starter ideas that you might be able to try out as well. So looking forward to it.
I love that. I love that. And Eric, if I remember correctly, you're also going to share a few starter tips and ideas for users. And so this is where it's exciting, because if you're coming at this from the middle school, high school perspective, and Cormac, you're coming at it from some of the lower grades perspective. So we're going to see some getting started ideas that probably have a little overlap, but are also unique to each of the grade bands. So Eric, no pressure, but we're going to have you go first, man, if you're all right with that.
Sure, absolutely. So one of the things that I would recommend for getting started with Book Creator is going right to the certification process. The online certification is absolutely awesome, and it's broken down into short videos that are easy to digest. You don't have to do the whole course all at once. The whole course takes about 2 hours to complete. And once you have completed it, you have a lot of the tools that Book Creator puts in your hands. And I made a book shortly after I finish the certification course. So I would highly recommend the online training and start there. Another thing that I did was I created a book to share with my students about how to treat substitute teachers. So when we're out of the classroom, it's just very nice to be able to communicate effectively with students. And so I chose something that was going to be really just a simple reminder of some basic expectations. I created a book on how to unlock your locker, which is a challenge for 12-year-olds. So again, just a very short, easy to use book. Gives me the opportunity to work more closely with those students who need some additional help. I used Book Creator to introduce myself to my students. So I created an ABC book, again, to get to know students a little bit better, have them get to know me a little bit better. The next thing that I did was started working with students. I went to the resources on the teacher dashboard and used the templates to teach my first lesson with students. And that was absolutely wonderful. The template walks you right through the process. And again, it's set up in different grade band levels, so you can find something at your level that really works for you. And then I just jumped in with creating books with my students, and am amazed by how much creativity that they are able to bring to the process, how they're able to summarize their learning, how they can demonstrate their knowledge, express themselves, and above all else, have an authentic audience to be working with. So we did some amazing projects last year, and we're doing some more amazing projects this year. Not all of the books have to be created by the individual student. You can collaborate and you can create a book that showcases student work or student achievements, like we did with the Iron Giraffe book, if you want to take a look at that. But I also found that some of my students are just excelling in demonstrating how they are understanding the content that we're teaching here at the middle school level. So one of the things that struck me was that there are built-in tools in Book Creator that really resonate with teachers and with students. And so I thought of some tips that would sort of give you success getting started. One of the things that you can do is you can provide feedback right in Book Creator. So if we go to that next page, David, and we look at there we go. So in the margin, you can put comments to students that allow them to see what they could do maybe to improve. In this case, we probably want to change out a image there that other than being from Forrest Gump would have been a great appropriate image for this particular this particular book about the Navajo people. But I was able to embed the rubric that I was using right into the end of the book. You can use GIFs and provide feedback that is a little bit more fun for students to see. You can also record your voice. So that makes it an easy way to give feedback. Another tip that I really like. So this is, if we go back one page, David, that there's just an example of a rubric. So getting that feedback right in the book for the student is just great for teacher communication. Another tip that I discovered was that we can use graphic organizers with Book Creator. So in the book creator, when you go to the more under the rocket ship, you'll find graphic organizers, and there's such a great variety of graphic organizers, and they're easy to use. They're real time savers, and they really give students powerful ways of expressing their learning or to achieve their learning. And I happen to write a book just highlighting that, so that you can click on that and you can get some ideas about different graphic organizers that are available, and very easy to find, very easy to use, and some terrific examples. And I would highly recommend checking that out as well. So if we go, and there's close to 100 graphic organizers. This is a tip that I really like. I created digital notebooks for all of my students, and I've been adding a page at a time to multiple books in different libraries. So it works out extremely well that I can send out content, I can send out writing prompts, I can send out information, I can tailor it to those students that need this information, as well as it's a very easy way of not overloading students, giving them a blank notebook with 60 or 70 pages in it. We can do it a page at a time. And that was a book creator tip that was shared with me that has been very, very effective. You just go to the page view, and under the three dots, you'll see the possibility of copying or copying to. If you click on the copy to, you can click and it will give you any book that you have in your libraries, and you can send it to multiple books at the same time. And let's see, the next tip I would say is that use Book Creator to collect student work and share student work, so that a student creates a page, a poem, an image, something to include in the book, and it's so easy to merge. It's so easy to bring in those small student work into one larger collection. So we do a special field trip to the Monadnock View Cemetery every Memorial Day to place flags on the graves of veterans, and reading student reflections, being able to experience it and provide the field trip experience to people who couldn't attend, parents, grandparents, the community at large, has been really, really special. And the kids have done so well. The students really enjoy using Book Creator as a way to get their work published. Let's see, one more tip is I really believe that modeling with students is an effective way to do it. So I try out all the assignments that I give to students. It gives me the opportunity to look for any kind of pitfalls or anything that isn't clear. But it's also just a fun way myself to enjoy the features of Book Creator. So last year we started with books about Thanksgiving, and it's really a lot of fun to see what students focus on. And again, these don't have to be big, huge books, but just a nice way to share student work. And the results are so professional, the ease with which you can create books, it really, really makes it a useful tool for students to use. And another tool that I found very useful is printing out books, and sometimes having that hard copy of a book. I use it frequently to make an instant bulletin board. So this is a bulletin board that came out of our Iron Giraffe book last year, and it was very easy to go and print. You get that through the three-dot menu, and taking the time to print the book gives you an opportunity to share it with students who are just walking by in the hallway, or people that might not otherwise be able to see that book. So it's another nice feature in Book Creator. When you do need it, you can print them out as print books. And I think this might be my last tip, David, but turning a slide presentation into a book is very, very simple. Once I discovered that you can import PDF documents, simply print the slide presentation in a PDF format and save it, and then you can import it, and it takes almost no time whatsoever. So if you have students that are using other applications like Google Slides or Microsoft, I'm trying to think of the Microsoft one. Sorry.
It's like Microsoft Teams or something.
Yeah,
Microsoft
yeah.
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
You can still get all of that information from the presentation into a nice Book Creator book that's much easier to share, much more convenient for people to look at. So again, if your students have, or you have old presentations that you want to bring in, it's really simple to do. So those are kind of my takeaways in my first 2 years of using Book Creator.
Well, that book is just chock full of student examples, and I love the guide that you made on importing slide deck into just directly right into Book Creator, because we know that once it's there, we can have students interacting, recording their voice, using the pen tool, and just in a much more simple platform and way. So, Eric, I'm impressed. You haven't been using Book Creator for very long, and yet here you are sharing your best practices and your journals and just what your students are working on, and just some great ways to integrate it in the classroom. So I really appreciate it. I hadn't ever really thought about the instant bulletin board idea, but yeah, I suppose if you printed 1 or 2 pages out of each book, you could fill up a bulletin board pretty quick. So really great idea, really very unique. Thank you for sharing your ideas. And for taking the time to meet with us here today. I think you're sort of in the smack dab in the middle of your school day. So
right.
Yeah, fantastic.
But it's
this
great.
Week, Thanksgiving coming up.
Right. It's great. And actually my students right now, as we speak, are working in Book Creator, working on this year's Thanksgiving books.
That is fantastic. So you set them to a task to work in Book Creator while you go and talk to the greater Book Creator community about using Book Creator in the classroom. That is full circle, Eric, full circle. I really appreciate it. And for folks that are watching live, we'll share a link to Eric's resource at the end of the presentation, as well as Cormac's resource. And if you're rewatching the show, you can actually just scroll down right to the description and grab the link to the book that you can see here being shared. So, Cormac, what do you think? You're a veteran. You've been doing Book Creator for a couple of years now. What do you think? Is Eric on the right track?
Yeah, I think it's always just lovely to see what everybody does with Book Creator, because everybody's doing something slightly different with it. I often think that sometimes I'm still what I would consider at a basic level in some ways, because I know what worked for me from the very beginning, and I've built on that, but I've kept the same kind of ideas going as well at the same time. And what it is just as Eric, I think, mentioned there, new tools kind of coming online every now and again, and you kind of go, right, how do I get that in there? How can I use that part of it as well? So that's the really nice thing, is that there are new tools that kind of just push you forward a little bit, so that you're not just redoing the same things all the time. You're always adding a little bit more to it. I think what jumped into my head there was when I first started using it, that the SAMR model was all the rage. Everybody was talking about it. And it was like that you were just modifying what you were already doing, or augmenting it, or making it better, and just adding something more to it. And like that's where I started, which was, in class we would make books, and we'd make them on paper, and you'd staple them together, and you'd put them into the class library. And at the end of the year, they'd forget them, and you'd come back the following year and find them on the floor. and all this work, all this wonderful work that the kids had done was just was forgotten about, and nobody outside the classroom got to see it. And I mean, that's where I went looking when I found Book Creator originally, was you could add sound to it. And because you could add sound, there was that extra little element. And so suddenly kids could record themselves reading stories. So what I was going to do is I'm going to jump into my library, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And I'll show you, now this is just a series of books that we've done. And what I'm going to do is, and for anybody that's watching, I'm not going to go through all these books, so you don't need to think we're going to be here for the next couple of hours looking at it. So I'm just going to show you a few, and it might give you ideas, but I wanted to kind of show you where we started out. So the very first book that I ever created with the kids was about an Antarctic explorer from Ireland called Tom Crean. And what we started out with was the simple idea of kids drawing pictures, and these are their pictures. We took photographs of those and we put some text, and you can see up here in the corner, the kids recorded themselves reading the book. And that was our first book. And it was just a couple of pages about his early life. And then another group of kids made one about his first adventure, and another group made about his second adventure. And what we ended up was kind of 4 or 5 very small books, and then combined those together. And made one book out of it. So we suddenly had this resource that told the story of him. And that's what I've always come back to in Book Creator, is that a lot of the time, without realizing it, when you get kids to work on these projects, they're creating resources that you can use the following year and the year after and the year after. So you're building up a great bank of resources by having a little army of slaves in your room, and that you can get them to make all this stuff for you. And what we also did that year is, at the time, going back 10 years ago, there was this big thing about app smashing, using other apps and trying to combine them together. And there was another app at the time called Comic Life, and it allowed you to create comics. So do you know what? I'm just going to see if I can just move this slightly for a second. And I'm going to go into the individual one, because it might just give me a bit more scope to play around with it here. We'll go back. And where are we? There we go. So we created a book called The Titanic, which we'll all know. And it's something that you do probably every year in your classrooms. Lots of classes would do it. And so what we started doing was, again, taking that idea of drawing pictures. And then we started creating a comic book version of it, so that on each of these pictures was a picture drawn by a child, and they were also responsible for adding the little bit of text. And so what we did was told the story of the unsinkable ship in a comic book format. Now, since then, Book Creator have added the comic book feature, so you've got all the panels there. So we don't need to go to a second app. We're just able to do it all within Book Creator. And I think I was saying that to David at the beginning, that it's one of the things I've loved about using Book Creator, is that every now and again, a new feature comes on, and or if you ask them for it. So one of the features that's in Book Creator was asked for by a child that I taught many years ago, and within a couple of weeks, they had added that feature. And it was lovely to know that there was a company out there that you could reach out to them with an idea, and they weren't looking at it from, okay, how can we make money out of this? It was more, this is a benefit to the people that are using it, and we'll try and put it in there. And it was lovely to kind of see that was out there. So I'm going to move back up here again. There we go, I've got the screen. So our first 2 books really were just that case of taking a photograph, adding text, or taking a photograph and making a comic on it. And then I mentioned at the beginning that I'd worked in an autism unit for a few years. And if anybody has worked in an autism unit, you'll know that social stories are something that we use quite a lot. And so I was looking at that a lot of the kids, we were carrying this little folder of social stories around with them. So when we would go on a trip outside the classroom, down to maybe the local village or local town, they would have to bring these social stories with them in case something happened or that we needed to assist them. And they were very noticeable that they were a child carrying a large folder with them. And I noticed, like, we were also carrying iPads and phones with us. And I started thinking about, is there a way of putting the social stories onto the device so that we could hand them the device with the story rather than anything? And again, adding that voice to it. So what we had was just a very simple story. So this was a child who was being asked by other people to do things. So they were encouraging him to do things that he probably shouldn't have. And so the social story just has your images, and it has your little bit of text down in here. And again, when we originally did it, we had a recording of a voice, but it was their parents. So I'd bring their parents in and get their parents to record the voice, so that when they were reading the social story, it was a voice that tended to calm them anyway. So my voice, you know, as lovely and all as it is, they were probably sick of hearing me all day in school. But their parents saying, sometimes I go to training for different sports, there will be other children also at training. It just brought them calmer straight away. It just helped and assisted it straight away. And like that, we could carry multiple social stories on an iPad or on a phone, and you didn't need to bring a folder that just made you stand out. People looked at you and said, "Ah, oh, why is that child carrying a folder?" And so instead, we could just put headphones on and they could listen to the story and read it in their own time. And so it was just, again, an image, some text, and a bit of an audio recording. And like those were, you know, if you're looking to where to start from, that's the simplest idea first, I think, is just start with what you would do on paper and add something that you can't do on paper. And sound is that extra little thing that I think you can great start with. And then I started thinking, okay, maybe I could start doing this myself. And so we had around 2016, I'm not that old, 1916, but we had the 100th anniversary of the Easter Rising here in Ireland. And this is something that I could probably rant on about for ages, but a lot of the publishing companies that produce textbooks here in Ireland produced textbooks to do with the Easter Rising, and they were quite expensive, and they were going to be used in probably schools for a year while we were celebrating the 100th anniversary. And I thought, I have all these resources. Like Eric said there, you know, you've got PowerPoints and PDFs and all these other documents. And so what I started doing was just kind of combining them all together. And I started creating a book that basically had all the details. Let me just try and go into it here. This way it might look a little bit better. And so what it is I have my table of contents. And this was something that I've always enjoyed adding into the books, is adding a hyperlink to a page, so that I can, particularly if I want to go to that section, because in a book you can flick back, but on a digital book, it's very hard to flick back. So if I click on that, it would bring me straight to that page. And then on the bottom corner of each page, I added something else that would bring me back to that table of contents again. And what it is these are all the resources that I had been spending years gathering, and they're all just compiled in one place in one book. And that's just, you know, a way of me creating my own resources. I didn't need to go and buy that expensive book that was for sale by the publishing companies. And it's one of those things, I think, that, you know, once you've created the resource, it's there forever. You don't need to create it again, and you can always adapt and change it. And so then that started off the next big change to my use of Book Creator. Was one child in the autism class had the iPad one day. He was playing Minecraft, as you do. So I'd given it to him. And he took a screenshot by mistake. And he came up to me and he just said, "What have I done?" And I said, "Oh, you took a screenshot." And I explained to him what a screenshot was. And he went, "Okay, I have an idea." And I said, "Great, go away. Come back with the idea in 20 minutes. So he went off and he came back. And as a class, we decided to create this book. And so what we did was we acted out the story of the 1916 Rising using my text from my book that I had made for it. And these were other books that the children had made. We had links to it. And we built sets like a Hollywood movie. And we created a comic telling the story of the 1916 Rising. And these were the main characters in it. And they were just distinguished by each one of them had a different mustache. And told the story of the Rising in a comic book format using Minecraft and Book Creator. And I love that it was just, it started with a mistake. He took a screenshot and got excited about it. That movie, or that book, got turned into a movie by them later in the year, because then they started asking questions like, can we not just have pictures? Can we have moving pictures? And it just built from there. And over the years, other children have seen that idea. And I know schools around the country still use that as a resource, but other children down through the years have taken that idea and kind of run with it as well. So I have this one. I'm trying to move it here. There we go. So this was a child I had a few years ago who was just new to the country, was only learning English. But on this, what she was able to do, and hopefully you'll hear the sound. No. Okay, so what happens here is when you click on this, it plays her audio in English. So she's reading out her comic. And to a lot of the children, she was struggling with English. So this took a lot of time for her to practice in it. But what we then did was we made a duplicate of her book and she wrote it in Portuguese. So she had come from Brazil. And so what you now had was this book in her language. And when the kids heard her speaking in Portuguese, it was just an incredible thing because she was, at the speed and the fluency that she had. And so suddenly what she had was a book in it. And over the years, you could have something like that and maybe have different kids in the classroom. So if you have somebody from, like we saw there in the list earlier on, Tunisia, you could have it recorded in your local language. Morocco, you could have your language. Croatia, I saw popping up there as well. And that you could create a book that have each child in your class that's from a different nation or a different country or speaks a different language, telling the same story in the language. The story just has to be done the once. You're just changing the text on it each one. And they're lovely, simple little ideas that you can add to each year. I've even got in on the Minecraft one as well. I started telling old Irish legends and Greek myths in Minecraft as well. I'm a lot slower. Like the kids were so fast at creating these. And so what I've started doing is creating my own little comics as well. And then there are occasionally classes that you just get and they take Book Creator and they just go a little bit crazy with it. And this was a group who they built a model of a volcano. And the model of a volcano in the art class became a lot more. So they decided, let's write a story set in our model. And then they started doing stop motion animations and making some green screen. This is their volcano model, looking at it from overhead. And it's about the town of Volcarig. And I'll just play a little video, but now again, you're not going to hear the sound. Oh, I'll just play. And so the children are acting out in their model and having a little bit of fun, sitting underneath little trees that are about this height. Now, that volume is very loud in my ear. I know you're not hearing it. And on each page of the story, there's either an image or a video telling about it. And this person on the left, by the way, is a teacher. That's seemingly that's what we look like when we're giving out. But eventually, of course, everything has to go bad and the volcano erupts and there's a massive eruption. And I'm kind of thinking of Iceland at the moment. So I hope we have nobody on from Iceland. And everybody dies a horrible death. And they used special effect apps to try and do various things. So this was some children climbing the volcano when rocks fall on top of them. And so over the course of the story, they were able to, and like that, it was again text and images, but they were able to add that extra feature. They added video to it and they added green screen and they added special effects to it. And like, they were one of those classes that no matter what they came up with, you just knew they were going to take something and run and go crazy with it. They also, and this is another one that I would kind of do regularly with classes, and I'm just going to go into the pages section of it this time to show you that, like, this is a very big book and it's about Vikings. And what we have is you have things like Viking men, women, and children, Viking food and clothes, Viking jewelry. And what we would do is divide the class up so that each group would have a section to do. They would create a book on that section, and then we would combine all their chapters together. And what you end up with is this huge book. And I'm just going to scroll to the end so you can see it here, which is what, maybe 90 pages or thereabouts. And that's a resource I've used year on year with it because we've got all the different pieces in it. You can see some of them added narrations. But that's a resource for teaching about the Vikings. Some of them created timelines. Some of them made videos in other apps and brought those into their books as well. But again, it's a resource that is there for me to use. I've created my own Viking books, but they've done them as well. And so the next just few books I'm just going to show you, these are just ideas that you might like to run with in your class. So this is one that's a lovely one to do at the very, very beginning of the year. So we create personal crests. And what we have is we have kind of a blank shield in it. And then within Book Creator, you have all these shapes that you can search for. So I think this is my crest. So it's the things that I'm interested in. So you can see I'm an absolute geek. There's superheroes and Star Wars and all sorts of things. And each child then would create a crest for themselves. And it's a way of kind of almost telling me what they're interested in, what sort of things that they like. So I know that this child here is into puppies and bikes and art and likes their phone and likes ice cream. And it's a nice kind of introduction at the beginning of the year to, instead of your kind of tell me about yourself book, that instead they tell me in the form of a crest. And another one that I loved doing was this book, which is What You Want to Be When You Grow Up. And so this child would write and tell me what she wanted to be. I love that she wanted to be a teacher, and that she knows she needs to go to work very hard, but she got inspired to teach by other teachers, had some junior infants. And I love that what we have is somebody telling us what she wants to do. And then on the next page, we have a picture where on a wall is a shadow of what she wants to be. So there's a little line drawing it up to here. So we've drawn in that part of it here. The next person wants to be a skateboarder and a tattoo artist, as you do. And again, the same thing, that on the shadow on the wall is them. So it's them telling you what they would like to be and not just writing about it. Like for somebody who's maybe struggling with the writing side of it, the visual side of it is there, but you get great results. And that's just having a standard background in it. And another one that I use every year is our favorite music. So I would ask the kids to share what their favorite music is with me, and I'd share what I like. So I would share my bits of music. This is a video telling them how to do it. And on each page, we have people. Now, I have to admit, I have been forced to listen to some awful music over the years doing this activity. Some children's taste in music is terrible. So I've got Elton John, I'm Still Standing. We've got Skillet and various other ones. And as the book goes on, we would create this. So this is kind of a collaborative book. The children would be able to log in and add their pieces. But when they had all added it in, we then turned it over to their parents, and their parents shared their favorite music. So we have the mums here and the dads sharing their music. So the kids were being kind of pushed to listen to music that they wouldn't normally do. And they would give a little comment on it and maybe say what they liked about it and what they didn't. But again, it's a lovely kind of collaborative one to do. We've done the same with arts and crafts. So I've shared arts and crafts with them, and they've shared what they like to make as well at home. And those ones. So I kind of brings me up, I suppose, to around the time of COVID. I'd made that 1916 book, but I hadn't used it myself as often. And then when we were all stuck at home on lockdowns, I had very little to do. So I started making books, and I made a lot of books, but they're again books that I'll share links with you as well at the very end, so that you'll have all of these too. And so I created ones like this one here. So we've got Peter and the Wolf. So if I go into this one here, and again, you're not going to hear the sounds of it, unfortunately. I think it might be just the way I'm here set up, but this is the story of Peter and the Wolf. And with each of these, if I was to click on the instrument, it plays the sound for that particular instrument. So we have the same here for the bird. So if you're not familiar with the story, each instrument is a different character. And then when we get to the story itself, on each page, you have the piece of music that accompanies that. So when you click on the page, it will play the piece of music that accompanies that part. So it's a real kind of, I'm trying to struggle with the word for it. I suppose it's a book that has that extra feature again of sound. It's a book you can hear. And where it kind of came from, that one was, I remember being in a junior infant classroom, so the really young kids, and I saw these phonics books on their table, and I went, they're kind of useless in a way, because it's a phonics book that doesn't make any sounds. And I always thought, book creators, that sort of one, which would be fantastic, that they could have the letters that they're learning, and when you click on it, it would play the sound, or the child could record themselves making the sound. And so you could make a phonics book really stand out by just adding that extra layer of sound to it. And then over the sound, I've made the history of flight. And so again, I'm probably going to come across here now as somebody who has far too much free time in their hands, because these are books that they're lessons that I like to teach every year. So I like to pick different parts of these. So I might maybe do Otto Lilienthal one year, or the Wright brothers, but another year I might do Charles Lindbergh. And so what I would do is share this book with the children. And on this, it is just literally all the resources I have, with images, with videos, with text. And again, that book is, I think, close to 100 and something pages long. 130, no, it's got even bigger, 150 pages. And that might look like it takes an awful long time to make, but what I found is that I had all the text anyway. The text was already written on PowerPoint slides or in PDFs. So I was able to copy and paste from there. I was able to search for images within Book Creator and being able to kind of put those together. So putting these books together takes a little bit of time when you get started. But as you start doing it, they become easier to do because you kind of have a process that you kind of go through. So the history of flight, I've done a book on the Titanic. I've made my own book on the Vikings. The Táin is an old Irish myth, the Táin Bó Cúailnge. It's a kind of an Irish legend. And it's one of these ones that I'm worried that some of the old Irish legends are dying out, that people are not telling those stories anymore. And it's because maybe there isn't a book out there that kids can read. So I've made my own version of it. And I use that with my kids in the class. That first ever book that I made was about Tom Crean. And a few years ago, I went and I made my own Tom Crean book because it's something that I teach every year. And again, that's another big book that if I go into it, it has all the aspects of Antarctic exploration that I'd like to do. So if I was teaching the children about this, I have all about life in Antarctica, Roald Amundsen, Robert Falcon Scott, Ernest Shackleton, and then a whole section all about Tom Crean. And if you have never heard of him, Google him or look at my book. He's an amazing character, very understated guy who was on three of the most amazing exploration trips to Antarctica. And so you can see it. Even when I'm talking about it, it's something I love to teach every year. And rather than buying a resource or going looking for it, I've just created my own ones and I just come back to those each time. And if I was to flick through here, I've got, say, pirates, because I do pirates every year. Valentina Tereshkova, so the first woman in space, something like that we've done. So we get, again, kids doing various ones and combining them. But I think like Eric said there, he likes to give himself the same assignment as the kids. I would do the same as well. So pick somebody famous who's been to space. I picked her. Other kids pick different people, and we combine them together to make a book. You'll definitely notice the space theme here. I like my space stuff. Apollo, Mars. Then I have some art. I've got some pointillism books, a book about Banksy. Recently, I think I made this one about 2 years ago, that I was in the car driving to school one day coming up to Halloween. Somebody was on the radio talking about bats, and I decided to go and make a book about bats. And I now have that, and it gets reshared every Halloween. And, it just goes through the bats that are in Ireland. But I've also put in some of the biggest bats, the smallest bats, things like that. Everest is another thing I love to talk to the kids about, and there's a book to that. And then I've started creating bigger history books. So we have the Aztecs, ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and I've started on the Iliad, which that amazing story. But all these books are there again. So I mean, if I go into my Egypt one, what you'll see is that it's not a book that you're going to sit down and just read in one sitting. It is a very big book. It has all the different pieces that I would like to teach during the year. It has all the different temples. And again, if any of the kids go into those, so if they go to Abu Simbel, it brings them directly to that page and they can read about it and they can see photographs of it. And I think there may even be a photograph of me in there somewhere in that book. But all of those kind of resources took me time to make. But once they're made, and you never have to go near it again, but you can always go back and edit. And look, I'm very willing to share links to all of these. So I've kind of republished them all in this library. So I'll share that link. I'll try and get it up now before we kind of start wrapping things up. And if not, I will send it on, and maybe you could send it out to them, David. Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, sorry. I was looking for the unmute button. Yes, absolutely. So if you're watching live, we'll share a link in a follow-up email tomorrow. So everyone will have that
Perfect.
link in their inbox tomorrow. I'm going to touch base with Eric and Cormac, everyone, and we'll get their resources compiled together and in just two easy to use links. If you're rewatching and you look down in the description, you'll see a link to both resources there. So thank you for your patience. If you're watching, you'll get these resources tomorrow in your inbox. Look from an automated email from Zoom. If you don't see that, you can 100% shoot me an email. My email is dhotler@bookcreator.com. It's in the chat there. You can also find me on Twitter @dhotler. So if you message me there, if you didn't get the follow-up email or you missed it or whatever it is, shoot me an email. Happy to send them your way. Gentlemen, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you join. As you can see here, the sun has set in our short hour together for here. Yeah. Eric, enjoy the sunshine while it lasts. You still got some more. The future is bright.
I just want to say how inspirational it is to see an experienced educator using Book Creator in so many different and fascinating ways. And that's what I love about the Book Creator community. There are so many great ideas out there to share, and people have been so generous. And I'm looking forward to trying many of the things that Cormac has given us.
Yeah, that's super inspiring. It was really fun. One of the points that I noticed, there's a relatively new user and a veteran user, and they both employed the same tactic to get the kids excited, and that was present them with a really easy to do lesson. So Eric, you shared the Teach Your First Lesson books, which came from years of people like Cormac doing the Crest project early on and saying, hey, really low-hanging fruit, shows off some of the features, the students pick up the platform, and then I can do a much more impactful lesson not far down the road. And you find that same lesson pack later. Now we've sort of formalized it, made it a little bit easier for teachers. I like Cormac. I think we should add a Crest page to the Teach Your First Lesson books. But again, the same tactic being used for new users and for veteran user. I thought that was really interesting to see that both of you had done that. And Eric, I'm always impressed when I see new ideas. You taught me about like this trickle release piece. You were talking about your students using these like ongoing journals, but on the first day, you don't need them to have the page for the last day. And so you sort of have the master journal built out, and then just every once in a while, you pluck out a page and sprinkle it on all those students' books. I think that's just a really fantastic way of, scaffolding for your students and creating the pace and the rhythm that you need in the classroom. So,
right. And what's really nice about it too is it keeps students involved in Book Creator throughout the year. And just like Cormac said, the digital notebook doesn't go away at the end of the year. It's something that they can look back on 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, which for a 12-year-old is just amazing to see the growth and the progress that they make over the course of 1 year, but then over the course of many years. And some of my students who are now in 8th grade are choosing to use Book Creator with their other students, with their other teachers, I'm sorry. When they get an assignment, they're saying, can we use Book Creator to demonstrate our learning? And other teachers are like, sure, that's a great way to do it. So building that independence where students are using the tool because it's effective in communicating, and it really helps them reflect on their learning.
And Eric, while you were talking there, a listener had a quick question for you, and I'll let you answer this. Does the new page get added to the beginning of the book or the end of the book?
It gets added to the end. So, but of course, in Book Creator, it's so simple if you go into the page view to rearrange the pages if you need to, but it automatically goes to the end. And if the students all have the same template to start with, I can tell them today we're working on page 17. That's the reflection that I want you to write about. What did you learn about the Renaissance? And one side is a text. The next page is a frame for images, so students can pull in the images that excite them the most about learning about the Renaissance and demonstrate their knowledge without a whole lot of words. Another thing that I noticed in Cormac's books, that a lot of times students who are reluctant writers have wonderful ideas that can be expressed visually or by recording their own voice rather than actually having to write out, which can be laborious for some students.
Yeah,
I think even that as well, if you're working in some other formats, when you add pictures, you're very conscious about trying to fit as much onto a page as possible. So the visual side of things kind of get affected because you print a small photograph and stick it on your poster. Whereas here you can afford to give the image a full page because another page is just another page. You just add another page to your book, and it doesn't matter how big your book is. So you can really give the visual side of things the emphasis that it needs a lot of the time by adding that extra image.
Mm. Cormac, I was so inspired when you talked about bringing in the voices of parents
Yeah,
to
that's a
help
lovely one.
support a child just like in that just-in-time moment
Yeah.
where it could have been your voice, but the sound of a parent's voice in that moment created the confidence that the learner needed to overcome a barrier and keep moving forward. And I got to tell you, man, I was almost tearing up. I was like, that is a really good idea. That is a
It
really
is
good
like
idea.
it's like I guess that just the thing is that your voice is calming enough to them, but if you're there, you're maybe not enough. And just the sound of mom or the sound of dad in the background, just telling you you're okay, relax.
Good.
It's brilliant. Yeah, it really
And
works.
and that just brought up a connection that I make. I like to share books with parents because seventh graders are not known for going home and telling parents what they did that particular day. And some of the amazing work that the parents get a chance to see. And
Yeah,
then there's the portion of the analytics where you can see that the book has been read in 20 different countries around the world. And
yeah,
that is so powerful because students begin to realize that their voice is being heard, not just in your classroom,
yeah.
not just with other teachers in your school, but actually worldwide. And that is so helpful for convincing students that it's worth putting the effort to really make this a nice poem or really make this
Yeah.
a piece of writing that you're proud of.
Because we very much push the idea of writing for an audience, and suddenly your audience is worldwide. And it's amazing to see those ones coming back and telling you your book has been read in 10 different countries or 20 different countries, and then that gives you another link in to maybe go and find out where are these countries, what would you like to find out more about these countries, and that's a really nice thing as well, just to kind of bring that global geography into it too.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, Eric, we hear teachers all the time talk about the authenticity that you get when and there's a little bit of that, like how many times do the kids go ripping through their like notebook to recheck the paper?
Yeah.
Never, right? Like no one does that.
Yeah.
But how many times do the kids go back to their libraries like, I wonder if anybody else has read my book, and they like click on the map and they're like tracking. Yeah, that's great. I think
And
that's
even, even within a school, or I said as well, a nice way to do is just even create a QR code, that could be hung up outside the classroom doors. So when you mentioned about the bulletin board, having a
yeah.
board full of QR codes that as somebody is walking by, they can just scan and it takes them into the child's book, and suddenly they're being shared around the school as well. There's so many ways of sharing it out where that wasn't there 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And
And I mean,
and
just like a virtual tour of your school, you know? Sorry,
Absolutely.
Eric, I cut you off. I cut you off.
no,
Eric.
I'm just saying that I was at a webinar and heard a librarian talk about a wonderful project she did where she had students read books and then write a review, and they were able to put that review on a QR code so that the next student simply looks at the book, takes a look at the review and says, oh yeah, this is the book for me, or I'm
Yeah.
going to move to something else. And again, it's those built-in features that make book creators so flexible, so useful, and so many different ways to use it that keep teachers coming back time and again.
I
Yeah.
couldn't believe, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Cormac, there was one other piece that I wanted to bring up during your presentation. You were
Yeah.
sharing your sort of your progression of what's happened with the Minecraft book and
Yeah.
how the students are writing their own stories. And you got to the volcano one, which I think everyone watching, of course, is going to say like, what an amazing project, what amazing students. But then I just have to admit, 15 years of classroom experience, the little like demon in my brain was like, when do we have time for a project like that? And then the other side of my shoulder reminded me, the projects where the end result is the book you shared with us, those
Yeah.
kids they're no longer working in class anymore. those kids are coming in at recess, they're staying after school, they're meeting up after school. Those the catalyst that you created in your project of saying like run wild with this, and then the authentic output that they saw of saying like we can make this book, it can be seen around the world, it's really fun to use.
Well, it is like it's a
Go.
process. It's the process all the way through. I mean, it starts off with we're making a volcano, because I'm teaching them about volcanoes. And at the time, I had a volcano book that I had made as well that I was going to use to teach them. And in fact, that with that particular group, the people who were responsible for kind of professional development here in Ireland sent a film crew down to us for a day to watch what we were doing. And so what we were able to show them was, here's me showing a book that I've created to teach the children about volcanoes. And then here's the children creating a volcano book to teach me back about it. So their book went in a kind of a fictional side of it, but there was some children sat down, they wrote the story because that's what they love. Others were really focused on creating the art side of it, saying making their volcano there. Then you had the children who were into doing a bit of green screen filmmaking. You had some children doing stop motion. And so you had all this activity in the classroom. And then it's all that stuff is pooled together in one place and you create a book. And I think that's what's nice about it, is that not every child made everything that was on it. They all went to the thing that they felt that they were better at or that they could contribute to. They worked on that aspect of it. And then just Book Creator was that central hub that brought everything back together. And like, we've mentioned things like PowerPoint and all, and Google Slides and that, and they're great, but it's hard to combine all those things in the same way. I mean, even there, like I saw Eric when he was giving his presentation earlier on, it was a book that he presented, and I've done the same myself, where I've used a book as my presentation tool rather than using the traditional presentation tools. But yeah, all the kids did their little bits and pieces and brought them all together. And it's one of those projects that I look back at and I kind of go, that was a fun couple of weeks getting involved in all of that and watching it. And that big model of the volcano, I left that school last year and it was sitting up high and I took it home with me and it's still sitting at my house. I can't get rid of it. And it's about
I love it.
about 2 meters long by about a meter wide. And yeah, I have to find somewhere to put that safely.
Yeah, right.
And it really speaks to the authentic learning that goes on, because creating a book requires students, in order to use a variety of different skill sets in order to create a book like what Cormac was showing. And so again, having teams that are working in particular areas, working towards their strengths, is a wonderful idea. And it's not time that's taken away from the classroom. It's time that's actually added to your classroom, because you're really looking at authentic learning rather than rote memorization or other ways that we have thought about education in the past. And these are real world skills that are going to help these students in the future, because communication is such an important part of every aspect of almost every job that you can imagine. And so being able to create a presentation that conveys that information in a very professional way, that is something that will last a lifetime with these students.
Absolutely.
Well, gentlemen, I can't express enough my gratitude for you taking the time to spend an hour with the community and share your experiences. That's brave and vulnerable of you. And you really set a great example for the rest of the community, sharing your ideas, but also looking for new ideas and getting new ideas from each other just in this 1 hour presentation. So you're just modeling the best of all behaviors, from educators down to awesome humans. And it's a privilege to spend some time with you and get to chat. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
Really enjoyable.
And for everyone watching, thank you for taking the time to be with us. And of course, if there's anything that we can do for you, just reach out, head over to bookcreator.com/community, or send me an email, dhotler@bookcreator.com.